Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips.
Welcome, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and Corey.
Hello, everyone.
And we're broadcasting on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley, on CIVL, from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation.
That came out valley.
Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show. It's a
It's
talk show. It's a
Look
talk.
behind you, it'll tell you.
It's a talk show all about metaphysics and spirituality. And every week we have a different topic. And sometimes we even have a special guest. And tonight is one of those nights when we have a special guest. And our special guest tonight is someone who's an expert in the law of attraction. Her name is Kelli Cooper. And she's a coach who specializes in that. And she particularly focuses on misconceptions about the teaching and bridging the gap between the theory and reality of being a conscious creator, which is quite different to all of our humanness. And she and her husband run an online business from all over the world that relates to the law of attraction. And she's on the show today to inspire us to make true energetic transformation and focus on emotional well-being with the understanding the stuff still comes this way too. This journey is much more pleasant than just trying to change the outside and get what you don't have. So welcome to the show, Kelli.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm really excited to talk with you. All things LOA. It's my passion subject.
Well, that's really great. And maybe we should find a little bit about you first, and then we'll dive into sharing what you know about the law of attraction with all of our listeners, who I am sure are really keen to hear about that.
Awesome.
So how did you become a law of attraction coach?
I would say, like most people, right, I was drawn to a journey of personal growth and interest in all of these things from a space of feeling dissatisfied with my life, being unhappy about certain things, having certain emotional turmoil and wanting to do something about all of this. So I was always interested in personal growth. I wasn't necessarily, I didn't really know about the law of attraction necessarily when I first started on all of this. I would say when I first met my husband about 12 years ago, he kind of introduced me to it. He had been listening to Bob Proctor CDs and Joe Vitale, some of these kind of earlier people, I think, that were kind of brought the teaching more mainstream. But even though it's books and stuff about it go back to like the 1920s and stuff, actually, it's very interesting to know that it's actually been talked about for a lot longer than we realize. But yeah, so that was the introduction to that subject matter in particular was probably about 12 years ago. And yeah, it's just, I started studying it like a lot of spiritual truth, universal law. You might not know it consciously, you're not living it, but when you hear it and see it, there's a part of you that recognizes, yeah, I know this. I just haven't been knowing it consciously and actually like living it deliberately. So a part of me resonated with this idea of like your reality is created by way of your inner world, your predominant thoughts, feelings, and all of that. So I just, like most, something resonated with it. I started doing this inner work. I started paying more attention to my beliefs and all of these things. And when I started seeing changes in my reality, that evidence, your own personal experience is very powerful. And I just kept going with it. And over time, you just manifest cooler and cooler stuff, and you pay more attention to your inner world. And you work on these kinks in your vibe that might be, getting in the way of your more ideal circumstances. And eventually I started blogging about it. And when I first started my blog, I didn't really focus on the LOA in particular. I wrote about other stuff, but over time I realized that was what I was most passionate about. So my blog really became solely focused on that teaching, and my coaching, naturally, that's my point of focus for people. It's people that want to make that inner transformation and create their experience more deliberately, understand their energy, understand maybe why they don't have the things they want, why they might be experiencing the things they don't want and all of that. And yeah, I just feel really passionate about it because if our inner world creates our outer experience and we have to get up and live in this world every day, I can't think of a better place to put your primary focus as far as your personal growth work goes, like being aware of your inner world and making adjustments as necessary to have your outside experience look the way you want it, because we're always going to care about that. We're always have that human part of us. We're invested in this world. So if we have this ability to influence it in a way that our circumstances are more pleasant to us, it's like, why not put your attention there?
Right. So to help our listeners understand this, and maybe we can even use your personal story as an example, because I know you said at the beginning of that, I was experiencing emotional turmoil, and that's it's a common human experience, isn't it? We all experience emotional turmoil, and at the start of our journey, we don't necessarily connect the dots between the emotional turmoil and the mental anguish and what's showing up in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So how can we help the listeners understand, any of those listeners who right now are dissatisfied with their life, who are unhappy, you know, who how can we help them understand that they can become empowered and turn this around?
I think the first thing that I would say to people from that perspective is understand that all of your beliefs you have now and painful stories that your mind might be telling about your circumstances, either in the present moment or the stuff that's happened to you up until this point, your childhood, your marriage, this thing or that thing, whatever. Your mind created all of that. Anything you're believing now that feels painful, it's not any sort of objective fact. You have the power to change it. But you have to be willing to concede all of these things I believe now, no matter how much my mind clings to them, no matter how much evidence I have in the way of my physical reality mirroring these things back to me. I'm willing to concede maybe these painful things I believe aren't true. Another thing too with the emotional feeling, which is very helpful for law of attraction stuff, is understanding that your negative feelings now aren't actually being caused by your circumstances. They are merely triggering something within that's already there, because everything that's happening to you, there's already a filter in place that's dictating your responses to these circumstances, whether again a present moment or something that happened to you already. And so it's coming from somewhere. So when we understand too that our feelings aren't being caused by our circumstances, we're more willing to go within and change this energy, change these stories, and we don't need to wait for things to change first on the outside to start feeling better. So like you said in my introduction, that's why I really like to stress to people, don't make this journey all about getting the stuff you don't have to make your bad feelings go away. That's not why you feel bad anyway. Start with the inside, focus on the inner transformation, and all the ego wants are just natural byproducts of that.
Right.
Basically what you're saying is, don't believe anything I'm telling you, but also don't believe anything you're telling yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, this is all stuff the first place you'll always have to start is you just need a willingness to change your mind, because that's all you can really start with. Because if you're just going to ask your mind to believe things that you might have little to no evidence for in your own life, when your mind operates the exact opposite way of, I base my beliefs and feelings on what I've already seen, your mind doesn't understand the energy comes first and then the manifestation. So it's not going to be like, oh, sure, I'll just believe this good thing now. It's like, yeah, that sounds nice, but you have zero proof that this is a thing. Like, no, sorry. So yeah, you just have that willingness to question what you believe now, be willing to deal with the feelings, understand where the feelings are really coming from. And then what trips people up with this work is they have such a hard time changing their energy without their circumstances changing first. Right. And it's like, but knowing what you know about energy, if you keep insisting on, I'm not going to feel better till something changes, you see, it's like, I read once a perfect metaphor for this, or analogy or whatever it was, that's like looking into a mirror and refusing to smile until your reflection smiles back at you.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't remember where I read that. I'm like, that's so on point about it. Because and that's what we're doing with the teaching. And that's what trips a lot of people up, is like their mind, because your mind makes a great argument for why you feel, and it's okay you feel badly. It's okay to want to change your life, and it's okay to recognize that contrast. But again, beyond the contrast, helping you recognize what you'd rather create instead, fighting against what is and hating what is and not willing to feel better until something happens to change, it's going to be a very painful, frustrating journey because the energy that created what you don't want is not changing in any way, and it's still dominating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the universe doesn't believe you either.
Yeah, because that's the thing. The universe, I always like to tell people too, I read in a yoga book once, this was my favorite description of the universe ever. It was, the universe is benevolent but disinterested, which basically means that it's set up to work in our favor. It can help us in all these amazing ways, but it has no personal investment in anything we're doing. The actual process of attraction is very neutral. So yeah, anything in your life, good and bad, is just neutral feedback of your energy. Your vibration can't be defied. So if we want to receive this assistance and benefit from this way of operating, we have a responsibility. We have to kind of hold up our end of the bargain energetically by making these inner shifts and actually believing this is how it works. Because if you don't believe it's how it works, you can't tap into any of that. So yeah, you got to really, the mind's idea of like, I'll feel better when this changes and I get to feel this way because I don't like what's happening. It's like, yeah, you're entitled to your feelings. You get to feel them, unload them, get them out of your system. But if your mind wants to use that as the fuel to drive all the change, but knowing what we know about energy, it can't work.
Yeah. You used a word in that, those many sentences, which I want to reflect on. And that word is responsibility. Because I find, at least in my work, that can be sometimes one of the biggest stumbling blocks, is because really one of the things that the law of attraction is about is taking responsibility for yourself, which is actually the most empowered state that you can be in. But exactly, people have a lot of trouble taking responsibility for their life and everything that's showing up in their life.
It is. I'm sorry, go on.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, it like you said, it's the most empowering perspective. And that's the funny thing about our mind. Our mind has created this whole belief system based on all this faulty thinking and all this, the world we see it as is an illusion insofar as how we think it works is just, we're so totally wrong. And we see the results of this erroneous thinking on a grand scale, like the world and humanity at large, right? So it seems very real, but it's all based on very false thinking and invalid fears and all of this stuff, right? So our mind has this way of thinking and being that's very painful for us, but our mind doesn't care that it's painful. It's like, I created this belief. This is my baby. Like, how dare you tell me how I think is wrong, how I feel is wrong. So yeah, your mind will cling to things that, no matter how painful, how much they keep you stuck. And that's a perfect example. Like you said, taking that responsibility is the most empowering thing you could do. Because you're like, oh, if I created this, then I can create something different. That's amazing. But the mind is like, wait a minute. That's because your mind sees taking responsibility. Your mind interprets that as everything bad that's happened is all your fault. And how dare you imply that these bad things that happened to me were all my fault and I created it, or I want these bad things and that's why they're, so the mind gets very offended at all of these perspectives and it just shuts you down from even trying to explore them. So yeah, remember guys, like taking responsibility, it's not about blaming yourself for the bad things that happened or beating yourself up. You're not being punished for your negativity or anything like that. It's just recognizing, okay, I was thinking and feeling and focusing and believing in a way that drew these experiences to me.
Right.
That's the result of my own thinking. Again, it's not about blame. And like you said, it's so incredibly empowering, but the mind, well, that's one thing in particular the mind loves to fight us on, because the mind loves the victim mentality. The mind has no power with all these empowering, enlightened perspectives. It loses its power when we think that way. So it's very good at seducing us back into our old patterns of thinking, because they're so deeply ingrained, it doesn't have to make very much effort at all to actually do it. It's very easy for it to do it.
Yeah.
I think a good example for that is people. Some people, like, you get two people living in the exact same house, facing the exact same direction. They have the exact same plants in their window, and one of them is just brown and dying, and the other one is flourishing, and they're watering it the same way. And the difference is one person says, I can't grow anything. I wish I had a green thumb. And the other person says, I can grow anything because I love plants. And the more you love the plant, the more it grows.
Exactly.
And it's just that's an actual realistic example, because it in effect, it is true. People determine the growth of their plants.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, it's so empowering, but the mind, that's the thing. That's why I like to focus a lot on the human factor in manifesting, because the mind, the way the mind functions, it's like basically the polar opposite of how you're needing to function to see these changes in your life. The things you're trying to achieve on an energetic level make zero logical sense to your mind. And it's like, wait a minute, like, you can't detach from what you want because you need it and you want it. Not understanding the energy of detachment is what helps it come in, because you're not focused on what you don't have, because you're detached and you're at peace with where you are now, making peace with your current circumstances. Because our mind, it's almost like our mind believes we need our pain and we need the need to get the stuff we want. Because in the typical action-oriented paradigm, all of that pain and need could be a great fuel to put us through the bad feeling action, the controlling, the manipulating, stumbling through obstacle after obstacle, fight, fight, fight. Because to our mind, it's like the only thing that would make us subject ourselves to all that pain is if the original pain is worse, and we think that pain will make this original pain go away. So to our mind, all of this energetic transformation with all this positive feeling and dropping the need, dropping the pain, dropping the attachment, your mind's like, if you do all that, you're not going to want your stuff anymore. And I'm not going to get what I want. Again, because it doesn't understand energy. So you have to be aware it just really fights for you to not make these sorts of inner shifts, because it sees them as a threat, not understanding this is actually what will get you the stuff it wants. It doesn't get it.
So how do you help people detach from that overwhelmingly dominant mind chatter that you're talking about?
The main thing I try to remind people is kind of like what I said before, because for most of us, what's driving the manifestation desire and the journey is we have this need, and the need stems from some sort of pain we believe will go away if we get the thing, the money, the boyfriend, the whatever. But when we understand that the pain is not coming from the lack of the thing, but the story we're telling around it, that it's being triggered by something else. When we understand our circumstances aren't what's really causing our problems, all the stuff the mind wants to do to keep you focused on the external and keep you focused on your need and attachment, you just naturally start to let go of that, because when you understand that the lack of the thing isn't the actual cause of the feelings, which is all you care about anyway, is just making the feeling. You want to feel better. That's all you want at the end of the day. That's when you start to detach from all the mind nonsense. And it might still be there, but it's more in the background, not at the forefront, dominating and controlling everything that you do. And yeah, when you realize that the need and is stemming from a pain that has nothing to do with the circumstance, you can do this work more easily. You're not in such a rush just to get the stuff you don't have, because you understand that's not the answer anyway. And again, naturally, that helps you move away from the mind functioning and how the mind wants you to do this, and the mind fighting for all its crap that it thinks will work in your favor somehow, but it just holds you back. So yeah, that's the main thing, is like when you understand what's really happening on the emotional level, what you truly want inside, where the pain is truly coming from, and has nothing to do with the outside, you go within in a way that the mind tries to keep you from doing, but you don't listen to it anymore, and you'll just do it.
Okay, great. So we have to take a break now, but listeners, you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley, and we've been talking to Kelli Cooper about the law of attraction on tonight's show. We'll be back after these few messages. Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and with Corey, and this evening's guest, Kelli Cooper. And we're having a very fast-paced conversation about the law of attraction this evening. and so in the first section of the show, Kelly's been explaining how we get caught in these sort of ways of thinking, these emotional realities and these mental realities, which are really components of the body. And they separate us from our true selves, because, at least this is my belief, we are spirit, and it's spirit that's meant to be guiding the show. And so we're talking about how do we get that to happen? How do we get spirit to guide the show? So I wanted to ask you, Kelli, what are the key ingredients that people need to know about if they want to manifest the things they prefer in their life, as opposed to the things that they don't prefer?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is recognize what you're really after at the end of the day is just a feeling.
Everything in our life kind of comes down to feelings, right? We don't like what we don't like because it makes us feel a way we don't want to feel. We're resistant to certain future outcomes because we think they'll feel a way that we don't want to feel. All the stuff we want is like, oh, I think I'll like how it feels if I have this. So what you want to do is identify the core feelings that you're after. And doesn't mean giving up on the specific representations. You could still want the boyfriend, the money, the business, or whatever. But when you understand it's truly the feeling you want, you find ways to start cultivating the energies in your life now without anything outside having to change first. And then LOA 101, right? Dominant energy, as an energy becomes dominant, it shows up in your physical reality. It gets mirrored back to you in different ways. You'll start manifesting things that feel like these feelings, including, again, all the specific things your mind wants, no reason for the money not to show up, or the boyfriend, or to lose the weight, or, whatever it is. So think about the feelings. Understand that visualization, affirming, all of these personal development tools, they can be very helpful for us because they help activate energy that's beneficial to our purposes. But know that that's not really manifesting, because what happens is I think the law of attraction becomes synonymous with stuff like that, and people see it as a very action-oriented process, but it's not. Energy work is not of action. You might use things to help facilitate the inner change, but so do those things, but make sure you're doing stuff that truly resonates with you. Understand that those actions in and of themselves have no power. Because what happens a lot of times, people will tell me, well, I said my affirmations, I did this, I did that, and nothing's happening. Yeah. It's like, okay, how do you feel? Is how you feel changing in any real way? Has your belief system and focus changed in any real way? And they're like, oh, actually, if I'm honest, no. Yeah. Because they think, again, we're so action oriented, and in the action world, eventually action, you might squeeze out some sort of result eventually. And our mind carries that thinking into energy work. And it thinks, well, if I do affirmations, I'll do this program, I'll journal every day, I'll do this and do that, then my reality will change. But they're not realizing these things aren't serving their purpose by helping you actually feel better and change your focus. And they just get very caught up in doing all of these things, and they're not actually paying attention to their energy.
Right.
Always make sure you're checking in with how you feel, and don't get too caught up in all that external personal development work. It's technically not necessary, but most of us will find some benefit in doing something. But again, just make sure it's resonant and you actually feel like you're emotionally benefiting from these, because if you're not, it's not doing anything. And just recognize too, you've always been creating your reality. So why you don't need to do some deep dive into your vibration now and root out every negative thinking and every fear and figure out why you manifested every little thing down to the last detail that you don't like. Again, remember the law of attraction is not a tool to manipulate reality. You've always been creating. So it's going to be helpful to have some understanding of the energy that created what you're dealing with now. Because what happens is people kind of jump right to the positive vibration activation, and they're not really paying attention to what's happening energetically in the moment. So none of the energy is transforming that, is kind of keeping these things from them and kind of drew to them the circumstances they're now trying to change.
Right. So I want to ask you a little bit about, I think, some of the blocks to people being able to do this. And one of the because what you've just been talking about is an energy status. And I think part of the energy status is to be receptive, to be able to be in a flow of receiving. And yet so many people have got this vibration of unworthiness and not deserving.
Yeah.
And I think some people can actually be really good manifestors, but when it comes to that final thing of actually receiving it and having it, and holding it and allowing it to be in their life, that's where they have an issue. So maybe you could talk about that.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Lesley, because this is one of the things I like to focus on, kind of the theory versus reality of manifesting. Because that human factor, because in theory, right, all you're being asked to change is maybe you didn't know about the law of attraction or believe in it, but now you know it's a true thing. Now you believe you create your reality. You activate positive energy around what you want, and then you just wait to receive it. And that's kind of the gist of it. But human energy, like any theory doesn't account for real world conditions. And the real world conditions, energetically speaking, us just not believing in the law of attraction and not just having enough positive vibes around what we want, that's not really our only problem. Like you mentioned, there's worthiness and deserving.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-sabotage because we might not feel like we deserve what we want. We actually might have a lot of negative associations with getting the thing we want. So a part of us consciously, we might want it so badly, but a deeper part of us is like, no, like actually getting this will actually be a problem in this way and that way, and I don't like that, so I don't want you to receive it. Our unwanted circumstances now, again, consciously, we're like, I don't like this, I want to change it. But on a deeper level, we see some sort of benefit to our unwanted circumstances. They're protecting us somehow, they're serving us somehow. So yeah, you know, for a lot of us, really getting into that flow, and like you say, receiving the things consistently and actually holding on to them. And so like there's the good is the norm and not the exception. We have to kind of recognize all of these other things that are happening, again, beyond whether or not you just believe in the law of attraction or not, and whether or not you're activating positive energy around the money or the relationship or the new job or the clients or whatever it is you want. So yeah, guys, you want to think about and for a lot of people, this sounds discouraging if they think there's all these other problems, but it's really not a problem. I always like to tell people, we all have our stuff, we all have our negative conditioning, and we all have these issues, right? We'll have our emotional baggage. That's par for the course of being a person. I always like to tell people the only problem will be we created all that stuff with our mind, so we can fix it at any time. It's completely fixable. Our only problem will ever be when we start going within and we start discovering these things, but then we choose not to deal with them because we don't want to feel the feelings. That seems too complicated, or I don't want to, I just want to get my stuff. If I get my stuff, I'll feel better, then I don't have to deal with the feelings. So again, the mind wants to keep us very externally focused on, let's just get the stuff we don't have. So yeah, just be aware of all these other kind of human tendencies that go beyond just whether or not you believe in the law of attraction and you believe you're a powerful creator or whatever. And yeah, if you can be aware of that stuff, you'll be that knowledge is very powerful for a conscious creator. Because if our energy creates, we need to have some knowledge of what's happening in our energy. Again, not some like deep dive, picking apart every feeling and constantly monitoring ourselves. But if we're in circumstances that we don't like, especially if it's been the norm for us over the long term, we've always had the bad relationships, we've always been struggling with money, all we get is one dead-end job, you know, all of this where it's kind of like a long-term thing. Energetically, there's something going on that we're probably not going to be able to just make go away just by saying a few affirmations. We have to be aware of like what's happening inside here.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I had a related question, which is, so far we've been talking about people who know what they want. We've been saying we want this stuff and we think this stuff is going to solve our problems. But there's another sort of category of human that I encounter, which is the one who has the people pleaser, who's given all their energy away and is giving all their energy into the service of others. Often they don't even know that there's such a thing of I can have something for myself, or what is it that I even want. So
that's a big problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. Like some people, they don't even take the time to consider it. They're too busy tending to other people's needs, or they're just so locked into their circumstances and so convinced, well, this is my life. I guess this is my lot in life, and I guess I have to just deal with it. I would say for people that don't know what they want, in some ways they're almost better off because they're going into it maybe with less attachment to very specific things and very specific representations of the broader specific, like the money or the relationship or whatever, the job. And it kind of goes back, I would probably say one of the things I already said, I would say is like, how do you want to feel? Because all you want in life is to feel certain feelings. And when you identify that, you start to get a better sense of, okay, what in my life right now is working counter to creating these feelings? And that gives you a sense of maybe things in your life right now you need to change. Maybe you need to scale back on commitments. You have to set some boundaries, stuff like that. Like these sort of people you're talking about where maybe they've kind of gotten away from themselves. And they don't even know what ends up in that sense. They're just like, I don't even know and they're just generally maybe feeling bad and not really knowing why or not knowing how to fix it. So yeah, how do you want to feel? What in your life is getting in the way of those feelings? What could you do now to create those feelings? What could you do right now to start feeling better overall? Because in that more general, I like to call it like general vibe management, where you just tend to your energy in a more general way, not so much with the specific goal of like, I'm using my energy just to get this thing, but like just general stress management will fall into that category, for example. Enjoying your life now, making time for hobbies and, you know, all that, just again, just general things.
Yeah.
Because again, everything we want, all the specifics, yeah, on a surface level, we might have a specific feeling with money that's different from its relationships, right? But at the core of all these specific manifestations, we're looking for a pretty broad general set of feelings that are like peace, well-being, contentment, security, all these different things, right? So the general vibe management helps create those more general feelings. And then it's like you'll start manifesting stuff again that feels like those energies. So for the people, if you're not sure what you want, you don't need to know what you want specifically to manifest it, because what you really want are the feelings. So what you can do now to start feeling better and making space for those feelings in your life, the specific ways that you'll channel that energy and the specific things you might decide to work towards manifesting at some point, that will all make itself known to you. And again, when we remember that the manifestations and the outside has nothing to do with how we feel, we're not in this mad rush to just try to change the outside. We're like, okay, let me go within. This is where I need to be paying attention to. The outside will take care of itself eventually. If I don't know what I want, I'll figure it out eventually. That's not a problem right now. I don't need to change anything outside to feel better first. I don't need to figure any of that out to feel better first. Let me just do this more general work on myself, the general whatever. And again, if there's specific areas in your life you want to work on changing, you could take step towards that now. But again, if you're not sure about any of that, it's okay. All of that will come to you in due time, because once you set the intention to make these changes, you set in motion all sorts of stuff on an energetic level that brings you the insight, the inspired ideas, the conversations, the resource, the perfect book, the even something as simple as a song lyric that's like, oh my God, that's so like what I need right now. It comes in all forms, big and small. So yeah, that's kind of the general things I would say for those sorts of people. Like, you don't need to worry about that quote outside, changing the outside so much right away and getting all specific with that. It's like, go within and see what you can clean up there, tending to your overall well-being, and all that other stuff starts opening up to you and taking care of itself without you having to participate so much mentally in the process by figuring it all out.
So
Can I just comment on that?
yeah.
I find a good example of that, in essence, is debt. People get into debt and then they want to get out of debt. But the debt isn't the issue.
Yeah.
The debt has nothing to do with the debt. It's your relationship with money. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And people's,
Exactly.
and a lot of time it's a learned concept that they have money's bad, rich people are ogres. You know, my parents told me I'd never have any money. I can't manage money, and all those things are there. But here is the intention: I want to get out of debt. Until you accept some change within yourself, and how you look at how you change the energy towards the money, the debt will remain. Or you'll get out of debt, and then 2 years later you'll be back in debt again.
Exactly. Yeah. When we just try to fix the outlet, at some point, in some ways, we can make enough surface changes in our energy to manifest these out. Because I've always said any attention to your energy is better than none. But like what you're saying, right? When we don't address those deeper issues, the problems tend to surface again. So like you said, they could change their energy enough, they'll pay off that debt. But if their relationship with money, right, didn't change on that deeper level, like you said, they'll end up in debt again, or they'll manifest some other financial problem to mirror back the energy, because the money is one of the best teachers. And a lot of our stuff shows up in our finances, which is why so many people struggle with money. There's nothing to do with like your money vibe is bad or anything like that. It's like all these other issues, and it just manifests as finances. So yeah, that's why I like to stress to people, like, don't be afraid to go deep with that inner transformation, because that's all you really want anyway, is to not have to deal with all this pain anymore. And again, all the stuff your mind wants, it has no choice but to show up, because when you're making those inner changes in that way, you automatically become a match to all those things, and you'll enjoy it when it shows up, and the changes become consistent. Because like you said, Corey, right? When we don't do all that, we might make the surface change, and we'll change the circumstance, at least temporarily, but we're not going to feel any better. You probably won't feel any better about money, even though the debt is gone, because the debt really wasn't the problem. It was how you were viewing it. So yeah, that's why I like to stress that deeper inner transformation. To be honest, it might not be totally necessary to get all the stuff your mind wants, but to get the best versions of it, to enjoy it when it shows up, to make it consistent, that's when you want to do all that, because that will lead to all of that, which is, I imagine most people would truly prefer that circumstance than just getting the bare minimum manifestation that the bare minimum energetic surface allowed in.
Yeah, an example of that. Well, I used to T. Harv Eker is one of my mentors, I guess you could call it. He used to do this penny thing in the seminars. He used to throw hundreds of pennies out on the floor, and you go around, pick them up, and you go, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And how many times have we seen people in a line where they'll see a nickel or a dime or a penny on the ground, or even people throwing pennies away thinking they're nothing, but yet they're having problems with money, not understanding the correlation between the two.
Exactly.
Quite interesting.
Yeah, money is a great example of that, because the way we treat money, it's no wonder it doesn't want to come around. Like if we think of our money relationship as a relationship with a person, for most of us, we don't trust it'll ever be there when we need it. We pretend we don't care about it and we hate it and it's bad, but then we actually secretly want it. We push it, like all of these things, right? We hold it responsible for all our, like if we think of like, if we treated a person in this way, the person would be like, you're crazy. I don't know how you feel about me. You're like hot. Like, I don't even know. I can't even be around you. So yeah, it's really, that's why it's good to pay attention, because all our kinks with money or anything else in life, it shows up differently for different people. So that's a good way to get insight too into your energy and what to transform. Like with money, for example, one person, their money issues might manifest as they're really afraid of never getting enough. So they hold, and they're self-employed, and instead of putting aside money for taxes, they hold on to it all the time because they don't want to give away any of that money, because then what if they don't get more? And then at the end of the year, they owe all this money in taxes, right? And they don't have it. Or so for other people, it might show up as the fear of running out. You use your credit cards when you actually have the cash to pay because you want to hoard that money, because what if you run out? So you drive up all this unnecessary credit card debt when you actually have money to pay for these things outright, right? So yeah, it's like so with money or anything else, like to get a sense of your energy, that's when you start paying attention to your actions and how you act with money or how you relate to people or whatever it is, you see you start to see all these kind of kinks in your vibe, and you start to get the feedback of where to change.
Yeah.
So it's time for another ad break, unfortunately, but we'll be back, listeners, in a few moments. You've been listening to Kelli Cooper talking about manifestation. Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and Corey, and this evening's guest, Kelli Cooper. And we're talking about the law of attraction, and we're talking about manifestation with pets.
Or the law of attraction. One of the two, either the law or the law.
Either way it works.
Yeah.
The universe doesn't care.
So I've got a few more things I wanted to talk about. And you've talked a lot about this term, your vibe management, managing your vibes. And when we're in a positive vibration, then we're a force of attraction for what we want. And when we're in a lower negative vibration, we're kind of a force of attraction for what we don't want. Now, some people, when they're in that very negative vibe, and the vibe they need to be in to get what they want is a much higher vibe, it can be a big leap to go from where they are vibrationally to where they want to be.
Yeah.
And so how do you help people make those incremental increments in their vibe?
I like how you, I'm sorry, go on.
Sure.
I like how you said that, because this is one thing I talk about a lot with people, because we're, like you said, we're in this lower vibe, and the energy we believe we need to get in to see these changes, they could be a big distance between them. So I always tell people, slow and steady wins the race for most of us with energetic transformation, because gradual doesn't necessarily, because our mind hears like, oh, gradual shifts. It's like, well, that means it's slow and it's going to take longer. But it's like, no, it's the exact opposite. Because when you try to change your energy more gradually, by not forcing positivity that just has no momentum behind it, you're in complete denial about your negative feelings. You totally pretend you believe things you just don't believe. Again, our mind thinks all of this lying benefits us, like we're tricking the universe or something. Again, there's no momentum behind this energy because we're not used to feeling that way. Our mind is so conditioned to living outside in. So if if things aren't showing up outside to feed this higher energy, your mind is like, why are you so happy? There's no reason to feel this way. We're used to the outside feeding the positive energy. So when stuff's not happening, this energy that again has really no momentum behind it to begin with, we just can't maintain it because it's just like it's very foreign to us. So yes, so I always stress to people, you know, gradual shifts in your energy will actually lead to faster transformation, because gradual, they're actually genuine and they're real, and you're building some real momentum behind them. And once you start building that momentum and your energy starts gaining this traction in that way, you start having manifestations. They might not be big, sexy, mind-blowing manifestations at first. They might be smaller things, but you see that energy getting nearer back to you more and more. And then that increases your faith and trust in the process. It increases your belief, because you're actually now not taking it on theory or trying to believe it because it feels good. You're actually starting to believe it because your personal experience is showing it to be true. And you just keep moving on from there and there. So for example, if you're somebody right now, you're super depressed, and every day you're like, what's the point of even getting out of bed? If you try to jump right to, oh my God, look at that beautiful sunset, life is worth living just to see this beautiful butterfly, that's a big leap from like, what's the point of even living, you know? And that's what people do, and that's why I always like to stress to people that it's not your outside circumstances aren't why you feel bad, because when that really sinks in, we don't engage with we don't try to do it this way anymore as much, because again, we understand, well, if that's not the reason I'm unhappy, I'm not going to be again in some mad rush just to try to change my energy, just to change my outside. So again, we're more willing to do the gradual shifts, we're more willing to deal with the feelings. We're not in such a rush to create these vibrations, so we're not going to try to fake them or rush to pretend that they're there, or put all of this effort into trying to be happy when we really don't feel that way. And there might be these positive feelings, but then there's all this tension behind them, because it's like we're trying to force them and it's not super genuine. So on the surface, we might feel okay, but then below, there's still all this kind of ick there, and there's a tension and there's an anxiety. So the gradual shifting is like, do some stuff right now that you think will make you feel better. It doesn't matter if it has anything to do with your manifestation. It might be taking a walk in nature, spending more time with petting your dog, volunteering your time for an hour a week, get you out of your own head and your own problems, go help someone else with their problems or whatever it is. And yeah, understand guys, like the gradual shifting is actually the faster way, because the gradual changes are all genuine, and that energy just accumulates as you keep going along. So if you're not happy right now, or you don't believe all of this stuff right now, don't feel pressure to create a whole new belief system, a whole new emotional world overnight, because if you were capable of flipping the switch like that, unless you're a masochist, you would have done it already, unless you like torturing yourself emotionally. And I imagine most of us don't. So yeah, understand that you don't need some perfect vibe to start seeing changes. You don't need to be in some super high, crazy energy to start seeing these changes in your life. Any change at all, you'll start seeing the evidence, you'll start feeling better, and you'll be more willing to go within, you'll be patient, you won't be in such a rush. And yeah, you'll just, and as you go, you'll keep noticing, oh yeah, I'm feeling better and better, and yeah, I'm really changing, and you see this all being mirrored back to you, and that just helps you keep going.
But in that there lies a problem, because what I've found with people, including myself occasionally, is that we set an intention, we release it, we do all the things we need to do, but then we don't see it when it comes, because it's not exactly perfect. You know, it's you've made the list of what you want, and number 6 isn't on there, so it's not a manifestation of you know. It's like I've seen somebody do it with a car. You know, they say, oh, I have no way to get around, and blah, da, da, da. And somebody I knew said, well, I'm changing cars, why don't you just take mine? Yeah, but it's an older car. You know, like,
people kind of crap all over these sorts of manifestations because they're not good enough, and they might just be a stepping stone. Like they say, he could take that car. It doesn't have to be the final car he settles for.
No.
But like you said, it's like there's what you're actually given this opportunity, or somebody they want to manifest money because they don't know if they're going to make rent this month, and instead of manifesting it in some mind-blowing way that leaves no doubt that the universe is a magical place, their mother lends them the money. And that's not as good of a manifestation, because it's like, well, who cares? It's just my mom giving me the money. It's like, yeah, but you got the money you needed. It doesn't matter who it came. It's like, I know you wanted to just fall out of the sky or something, maybe some like really exciting way to feel excited about. But I'm like, your mom gave you the freaking money that you need. So yeah, a lot of times too, guys, recognize stepping stones recognize that it might come in a form that's not the perfect form yet, but it'll get you where you need to be. And yes, celebrate these manifestations. And it doesn't mean you have to settle for this or anything. Like the car is a perfect example. It's like you need that car. You're manifesting what you actually need. Is it the last car you'll ever get and you have to settle for the old car? No, you can still get the new car eventually. So yeah, recognize that a lot of times there's stepping stones. The exact thing in its perfect form might not fall out of the sky tomorrow. A lot of times the manifesting, it's a progression, it's a process. And that's okay. That's just how it is. And nothing has gone wrong. And just, yeah, recognize these things when they show up and celebrate them.
I had an experience once that was really hilarious when I think back on it. I was sitting at a table having a hot chocolate in Burnaby here in BC, and I had been reading a book about manifestation and things like that. And it says you can create things that nobody else could ever create, and you can create things out of air. It's like a laser, it's like a hologram. You can do this. It takes a lot of power, but you can do it. So I was sitting there and I'm going, okay, I was looking at a skyscraper and I said, I want something to come to the top of that skyscraper. And what came to my mind was Godzilla, like it's King
Kong.
Kong, you know, the ape, right? King Kong. And I looked at it, and a jet plane came flying straight over the building. And I looked at that and went, yeah, but that's not King Kong. And then I realized, hang on, you said you wanted something to change over the top of that building, and something did. And it was, I had to laugh because it was such a strong manifestation of, such a strong manifestation, yet part of me almost wanted to reject it because I didn't quite believe it, right?
Yeah, our mind is very, like, that's why I like to talk about the mind a lot. Our mind is just so weird in so many ways. Like, you think about wants all of these things so badly, but then all the ways that will help us get it so easily and quickly, it's like, nah, but that's not the way I want to do it. And it's like, why not? Why do you want to do it this hard way? Or why do you want to fight me on all of this? And yeah, you see, we have this amazing power. And yeah, and with that example too, sometimes it could freak us out a little bit. Like when actually stuff starts working, people can get a little freaked out and they're like,
oh yeah,
this actually works. Like this is kind of, because anything new is going to be scary and uncomfortable, even if that new thing is so desirable or seems so awesome. Or again, our mind is weird and it likes to keep us in a place that's full of icky, weird stuff, and it's like, no, but I'm comfortable here, so let's just stick around here.
But you can see the thing that can be scary about it with some people, and I always like to write this when I'm writing a post about this or something. I always write that as you can create positive, be careful because you can create negative as well. And it's like for myself, I know that if I wake up, when I used to work for a living type deal, if I didn't want to go to work in the morning, all I would have to do is say to myself, you know, if you had the flu, you wouldn't have to go to work. And in 5 minutes, no word of lie, every time I would display flu symptoms.
Yeah.
But the problem is, then they would stick around for a day and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's not, you know, you always want to be monitoring your stuff. You don't want to be obsessive about it because that'll just drive us crazy. We have like tens of thousands of thoughts a day. So it's always like, you know, pay attention to your negativity, but don't like obsess about every little thought that's like, oh my God, that's bad, that's negative. But when it comes to the stuff in your life that like you feel like you're really struggling with, the stuff that's really important to you, yeah, like be careful with your words, be careful with your actions, be aware of what's motivating, what energy is motivating everything you're doing. Are you aligning right now? Or are you trying to force and control all of this stuff, right? So yeah, being a conscious creator requires us to be more conscious of our thoughts, our feelings, how we're conducting ourselves, how we're moving through the world. Because a lot of people ask me, well, how can I tell if my energy is changing? And it's like, well, your life is your beliefs manifest. Everything human you does is being motivated by something internally. So when the unexpected expense comes up or you had that bad date, how did you react? How did you feel? Did you just shake it off? Like, okay, I'll make more money or plenty of more fish in the sea? Or do you go into an emotional tailspin like, oh my God, I'm going to die alone and I'm always going to be broke and I can never get ahead with money or whatever. So kind of what we talked about before with money and stuff, when you pay attention to how you move through the world and your actions and the choices you make, your habits, that's all a very clear indicator of where your energy's at. And if you start acting more from these spaces of faith and trust and the things you don't like, the mind doesn't like when you don't react to them as strongly emotionally, then you start to see like, oh yeah, my energy is really shifting. So yeah, being honest with ourselves, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. Honesty, I always say, is like a conscious creator's best friend, because if we can't be honest about our energy, we can't change it. So it's like, if you can't change it, you can't really change your reality in any meaningful way consistently.
Yeah. So I wanted to jump on the word change.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to ask about or talk about is, let's say the word, our society, whether we call it capitalism or whether we call it
Mm-hmm.
accumulation, there's this whole thing that people just, it's like a more,
Mm-hmm.
expand. But we're on a planet which is based on duality and polarity, where everything
Mm-hmm.
has an opposite and everything occurs in cycles. And so there's a cycle, and I mean, whether you call it yin and yang or whether you call it creating and destroying, there's a cycle of change where we've got the creation of new things,
Mm-hmm.
but we've also got the dissolution of what was before.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. I mean, and we have been kind of, because we've been talking about the letting go of the old programs,
Yeah.
and replacing them. But I think, a lot of people get on the train of the law of attraction because I want more, without realizing that this principle of,
Well, yeah, I think part of like letting room in for the more, there's some things you might need to let go of in your life now. It's always, and it's accepting, I think over time too, some things you manifest, they might not be meant to stay forever.
Right.
So it's always being open to like the purpose of a manifestation. The next guy you manifest now, he might not be there because he's meant to be the boyfriend, for example, or the one. He's there to help you break down old conditioning and to help you break out of the old person you are now that's attracting the bad or whatever. So yeah, I think it's really about, and I like what you said too about always wanting more and more and more. We're here to create, and we're always going to want to create and move towards new things, and that's fine. Like nothing would exist if none of us felt that urge to like create things. So that's innate in us, and the wanting is a part of that. But I think too, and this kind of goes back to what I said about always recognizing what you really want is from within, and then the outside is not really what you're looking for. So what happens is when you feel whole and complete as you are now, and you're not always looking to the outside to change, you'll be more comfortable with the things that maybe naturally are supposed to cycle out of your life. They're not meant to, they serve their purpose and they're meant to go. Maybe the actual going itself is important in your energetic transformation somehow, or you outgrew it. And you can want more, and you can be oriented towards the future, but you can still enjoy what you have now. And you can want to expand and have visions, but it's not from that place anymore of like trying to fill some lack, fill some void, make yourself feel better. It's just like, oh yeah, I like this thing. I like this new change in my life. I'd like to expand this thing. I want more, because it just feels like the next natural step. That's a great use of my talents or my time. That thing will really help me feed the good feelings I'm looking for. It's a good match to these energies I want to see in my life. It's a good reflection of my values or whatever. And yeah, it's just when you really go within and see it's not really the outside, you accept these natural cycles that you're talking about. You can have this vision and you can want the more, but then it's not, but you can still enjoy the present and enjoy what you've already created. And again, it's not always about, well, let me step up my game to feel better or to get some void or to whatever. You just want it because you think you would enjoy having it. And you can go about creating and getting the more without feeling like you need the more. And when we drop the need, that's a much more fun way to be a conscious creator. Yeah. We can create all sorts of awesome stuff. We don't need it, but it's cool to have.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about the example of a relationship being a temporary thing, it sort of brought up another point in my mind, which is what often will happen to people on a spiritual journey as they're increasing their vibration, is that, as you're saying, your reality shifts around you, and sometimes that can mean that old relationships dissolve and disappear. Yeah. People that were important in your life drift away, cease to be important anymore, because you're no longer a vibrational match, and that can be difficult for people sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're changing who you are, if you're no longer the person that you were when this relationship started, like you said, Lesley, it's very possible that vibrationally there's just not a fit there anymore. Yeah. And I know it's scary for these changes and these natural endings and these things to happen, but always know that as you're working on your energy, you'll align with replacements, if you want to think of
Yeah.
them that way. You might drift away from certain friends, but then new ones come in.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I'm aware, unfortunately, that we're towards the end of the show, and there's so much more we could say, but we don't have time to. So I think we better ask you to share with the listeners how they can get a hold of you if they want to find out more about what you do and contact you.
Absolutely. The best way would be going to my website, livelifemadetorder.com. There you'll find blog posts, podcasts, links to videos I have on YouTube, information about my products and my private coaching services, links to my social media. Yeah, livelifemadetorder.com. That's the best place to go to learn more about me and what I do. And if you like my content, you'll find a lot of it there.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Kelli, for being on the show. We've really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you so much, guys. I loved it.
You're welcome. Listeners, you've been tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and Corey and Kelli Cooper this evening, talking about manifestation. We'll be back next Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific time on CIVL.
Bye now. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. You can also find the questions that were asked during this show at the website on our free card reading podcast page, where you'll find a full list of them. Come back again.